nice skin, so gorgeous. We thank the life gorgeous. Thank the life gorgeous. I love the life gorgeous. Its torso is so tight.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Life Gorgeous. My name is Craigers, and this is where I share my magical life in hopes of improving your life. Special guest today. You know, the focus groups say they love when I have my old friends, their old writer friends and comedians from The Late Late Show. Here's one of them. Very clever, talented man, also a producer, Ted Jessup.
Thank you.
Distinguished. You look distinguished.
I'm got a sort of a Bob Seger thing today.
Michael McDonald, Bob Seger. I like your glasses. They look pricey. I collect glasses. You don't have to tell me the brand. We don't have to show off. Can I start with the first question? When I knew I was going to interview you, I'm just going to jump right into it.
I'm ready.
How did Toby Mountain change your life?
Toby Mountain, well, it was loosely based on a certain kind of country singer. And the thing that changed my life most is there was an actual Toby Mountain who was a film editor in Maine. Called and said, "Stop doing it. You're ruining my life."
So for the listeners, Toby Mountain was a country singer character that Ted played on The Late Late Show. And you would sing and wave the flag and be patriotic.
He was very patriotic and right wing, but it seemed like he had a secret. He tended toward kind of male only relationships, and wouldn't sort of really come out.
Do you have fond memories of The Late Late Show? Because Goldie and Gibby and the Sulk acted like it was their favorite time in their entire life. Maybe they're just buttering me up. I don't know.
It was a wonderful time and very collegial.
Yeah.
And in fact, I saw Alec and Goldie and John Viner last night.
Oh boy.
We had some fond reminiscences. And it was really fun. It was a creative, fun group. And I think we felt like we were doing something that was like a little different, experimental,
right.
Controversial. And, we liked each other a lot. And the proof is in the fact that we're all, still talking.
Right.
25 years later.
You're from the East Coast. A couple areas I want to talk about is you are musical. Now, did you want to be a musician? A lot of people, from the owner of the Knicks, James Dolan, plays in a band, to McEnroe plays in a band. How musical are you? Did you have a band?
I love music. I grew up in Maryland, a suburb of Washington, D.C., so it had a sort of southern tint. So I loved bands like the Allman Brothers and Marshall Tucker and Leonard Skinner and bluegrass, and Danny Gatton, a lot of sort of, Southern rock and roll. I played in a band in high school, but I would say I'm a sort of, not much of a picker, but kind of a campfire guitarist.
Right.
My girlfriend is a singer, so I back her up and rehearse with her.
Tell the people, not everyone will remember this, but your girlfriend's mom, because I know the name and I know the big song, Midnight at the Oasis.
Yes. Yeah. My girlfriend, Jenny Muldaur, is a singer. She's on tour now with a guy named Teddy Thompson. And her mother was Maria Muldaur, who was a kind of 60s folk fixture in the famous Queskin Jug Band, and then had a hit with Midnight at the Oasis. And I'm a Woman and Feel My Leg, and, has made, many, many albums, and is a sort of traditional blues singer. and still performs. Lives up in Northern California.
Is she in awe of your musical talent?
I think she's respectful. I think she realizes it's in a different sort of space.
Yeah.
We've sung together before,
Right. And then
she's very
now,
sweet.
so you're not into like Al Stewart, Year of the Cat. I have a friend who that's his favorite song of all time.
No, I would say that's not my thing. Yeah, no, I tend towards the probably more square, sort of melodic.
I've heard you reference some singers, and I don't really relate to some of them. I grew up, I didn't listen to white rock and roll, I listened to soul music, and then my dad had me listen to Sinatra and Nat King Cole and Buddy Greco and all this Gershwin, blah, blah. So some of your stuff I don't necessarily relate to. I have friends that argue, a friend that's being obstinate where he likes to make fun of Paul McCartney because he's a Lennon fan. Did you ever get in those arguments, Lennon versus McCartney?
No.
Nothing?
Yeah, it was cool when I was in high school to think Lennon was more of a rebel, but,
right.
And more rockin' and less sort of sweet love songy. But, Paul McCartney's obviously a kind of master.
Right.
Who suffered from John's kind of martyrdom. But I think they were mostly like an amazing team. And I like a lot of soul music. I love Otis Redding and Marvin Gaye and Solomon Burke. So I'm not completely white, but
right.
In my tastes, but I know what you mean.
One of the coolest things musically, you mentioned Marvin Gaye, and there was a guy covering I Want You. And Mercy, Mercy Me and I Want You, they would do that together, those two songs. But Robert Palmer, we used to get the feed of Letterman at 2:30 in the afternoon because he was recording at 5:30 in New York. We were in LA. And we'd get the feed of the live show being taped, and they would always go to black during a commercial, but Paul Schaefer and the band would play. This time they didn't go to black because Robert Palmer was singing to the audience, but actually kind of had his back to the audience singing to Paul Schaefer, I Want You. I don't know if you know that song.
Yeah.
But it was so dynamic because Robert Palmer had a lot of soul in him, and I really enjoyed that. I wanted to ask you, some of these guys are into Springsteen and some of them aren't. I just always I always find it entertaining when people are passionate, or as Mike Gibbons says, Springsteen, every song is about, I got to get out of this town. Oh, I have a car. Oh, there's a road. So it was those three elements, all of his songwriting, mocking this legend, Bruce Springsteen. I love it when people are arrogant that way. What thoughts on Springsteen?
Recognize his showmanship. Not like a crazy fan.
Right.
Wouldn't go to a show now.
Have you seen him? Have you seen him?
I saw him. Yeah, I saw him back in the 80s.
Supposed to be amazing live.
Yeah, that's his thing. A lot of energy, very long shows. Never liked the kind of bells or the clarinet. But recognize his kind of primacy in the sort of canon of rock and roll. But yeah, not my thing. I liked kind of more kind of Allman Brothers, and then kind of folky country,
Right.
classic country, and Townes Van Zandt and.
What about Neil Young? What about Neil Young?
Love Neil Young.
Yeah.
Love Neil Young. Loved Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. Loved folky songwriters like John Prine. Loved Dylan.
Oh, I was going to ask you about Dylan. So you're a big Dylan fan?
Yeah. I think he's the sort of master.
Yeah.
And I like his contemporaries that are still, people like Loudon Wainwright, that are still writing sort of clever, cool, folky songs. People that were called the new Dylan, you know.
Right. Well, we've gone in about 10 minutes, and you haven't mentioned Kylie Minogue.
No, nobody can touch her in what she does. Her and Natalie Imbruglia, and they're great. They're in their own class.
I realized that when I said I had a little guilty pleasure, it was actually just one song, Love at First Sight, because I like dance music. I've always liked dance music. And
You were part of the Studio 54 thing, so
yeah, that was in the 70s. I went to class, and there were the group of guys that wore Disco Sucks t-shirts. So these were the white guys that probably couldn't dance. Were you anti-disco?
I accepted it. It wasn't my thing. I didn't go to dance clubs then. I was just talking to somebody about how, in high school, if somebody didn't like, your favorite band, you'd be like, we're not compatible. But
exactly. No, it's a thing that, and it still happens as adults. I say it's like an 8th grade conversation. Well, how can you like them? How can you think you're cool?
You like the Bee Gees? You don't like, Little Richard or Chuck Berry?
Right.
So yeah, I didn't, I was sort of going to clubs, in New York in the 70s was sort of a little early for me. So yeah, I was still mired in a kind of Southern country rock thing when I went off to college in the late 70s.
What category? Here's a one-hit wonder. Michael Murphy, Wildfire. What category is that? Soft rock? Country rock?
Not country rock. I don't know, soft, easy listening, kind of rhythmic R&B kind of. He's a great singer. He has a great, great voice.
Right.
An instrument. I was never into that stuff. Doobies or Chicago, or that wasn't happening.
So does it bother you? Because I've made you do this multiple times. Does it bother you when I would say, hey, tell the Rex Harrison story, the one with the cat? Does that bother you? Because it's really entertaining for me.
No, not at all. The sort of master light comic Broadway and film actor from the golden age, Rex Harrison, who a lot of younger people know as Dr. Dolittle, but who was in My Fair Lady, was oddly a friend of my parents. My father was a diplomat who worked for the CIA overseas and in the White House in Washington in the 70s. And they met in Switzerland, where my father was stationed in Geneva and where I was born. And so they stayed friends for a long time. So I would see him when I first moved to New York and first started working in television at NBC. But he would come down to our house for Thanksgiving and was kind of imperious, and he only drank champagne. He would never drink, OJ or water or anything. And he would have his own cases of champagne sent. And he would get pretty tight pretty early. And I would always be sent into the living room to get him because he didn't want to sit at the table a second before, food was served. So I would be sent in kind of, Rex, it's time. And I'd have to help him up because he was getting sort of old. But we had this cat, Jamila, that was a Maine Coon cat that had sort of, long, wispy gray hair that would wend its way in and out of his legs. And he would sort of he was sort of affectionate because he could be quite brittle. But Jamila broke through in some way. I came in to get him one Thanksgiving, and he was sort of grasping for Jamila, but I noticed she'd wandered out of the room, and he'd knocked a gray pillow onto the floor, onto an oriental rug, so it sort of stood out, and he was staring at it. His eyesight was very poor, I should have mentioned, but he was saying, "Come here, "Come here, puss, come here." And I had to say, sort of pick up the gray pillow, put it on a chair, and say, "She's very tired, but we'll get her back after the meal."
Oh my God, that's classic. How old was he then? He's in the 80s, right?
Yeah, in his 80s, still
Yeah.
doing like the occasional kind of, I'm doing Private Lives with Claudette Colbert on Broadway.
Right.
Had an amazing apartment on 52nd and the East River. Garbo lived in the building.
Oh,
And I was like, do you ever have her down? It's like, no, I can't stand her Swedish gloom. And neither would ride in the elevator with the other. But he had his Oscar there. And he was cool. He was very sort of old world and classy. And
at the time, did you know how cool a situation it was for you to know him?
Yeah, because I was steeped in old movies. So the fact that he had stories about Robert Donat and George Sanders and stuff, I was completely on board and in tune with like his era of English and Hollywood filmmaking.
Did you ever hear the note that George Sanders left before he took
on board?
Oh yeah, it was a little more negative than that. This bitter world, this awful world. I'm leaving this terrible world.
Rex told me a story once where George Sanders' wife was, who was Zsa Zsa Gabor, was having sex with this Panamanian playboy named Porfirio Rubirosa, who was rumored to have a huge penis. And they put a ladder up to her room and climbed up to catch her in the act.
Oh, wow.
And Rex said, we were very unimpressed. But it was amazing to imagine two sort of 50-year-old kind of English actors wrestling with like a wooden ladder in Bel Air.
Are you comfortable telling the George Plimpton story? Or should we change the name?
I did see him sort of recently in a restaurant.
No, he's passed. He's passed.
I mean, 2 years ago.
Oh, did he? I thought he. Oh, I didn't know that.
Well, I'm sorry. I was confused. I thought you were saying George Hamilton.
No, George Plimpton. George Plimpton. Remember that story? And by the way, we can edit out the name if you want to tell the story and we don't name the guy. I can just take this part out.
Well, we can decide. So I knew George Plimpton slightly socially through family stuff, and I was part of a writing team. I hope this is the same story, but that was working on a parody of the Ken Burns baseball series. So we met in his apartment and drank and tried to construct this thing with a bunch of famous writers, old National Lampoon writers, and it was a good group until it seemed like the president of HBO just wanted to, be with Plimpton because he was so sort of socially kind of prominent.
Right.
And he would get, he was a brilliant writer and founder of the Paris Review, and he would get very hurt if people sort of didn't like things he pitched. And he pitched a couple of things, just like, what about the name that we probably shouldn't say this because anyway, he would pitch a name that was sort of casually racist for a baseball player.
Okay.
And somebody would say, I don't know if that'll fly. And he would be very sort of wounded, say, I don't know, I thought that was terribly funny. And sort of sulked for a little while. But he was very witty and funny and had great stories. He told me that he used to drive Truman Capote into the city from Long Island. And every time the Manhattan skyline would come into view, Capote would say, there she blows. And I said, that seems like it would get old, like by the second time. He said, yeah, very much so. Very much.
Do you remember the one that I recall was he thought he was going to I thought it was either a raft or a small plane, but he was going to die and he was concerned about something, a collection he had. That's the story I remember. Do you want me to tell your story?
Where like the only thought that went through his mind when a private plane was crashing, was that he hadn't kind of adequately hidden his porn.
Right. But that had to be fun to hang out with all those people, all those literary types.
Yeah. My parents were sort of well-read and educated and had fancy friends in Washington. And my father was part of the government that was the sort of end of the sort of WASP ascendancy.
Right.
And I'm actually pitching a show now that's about growing up in Washington in the 70s with CIA parents and secrets and
oh, cool.
That era that formed what's going on today.
It's so odd that a guy with that background, that you are a big Trumper, but we won't get into that.
True, not true.
I also remember you played hoops. I would compare you to Billy Paltz because I like saying Billy Paltz. Played in the ABA and a little bit in the NBA. You had a nice soft touch. You told me something once, and you probably don't remember. I remember what I want to remember. You said, once the Bullets, now the Wizards, once they won the championship in the late 70s, I said, it's never going to be this good again. So I kind of stopped following the NBA. Is that true?
Yes. I'm frozen in the world of Elvin Hayes, Mike Reardon, Phil Chenier, Dave Bing.
Yeah. Right.
And the great Wes Unseld.
Yes.
6'7" center who could defend against 7'2" guys.
Yeah.
Outlet pass, length of the court.
Yep.
So I knew that it would never happen again. So that's where I'm kind of stuck in amber. But it was a great era.
Yeah. It was, and it's also, I think it's great to, as a kid, I always tell people my childhood was comedy and basketball. Just, it's good to have those things. As my folks said, it keeps you out of trouble to play ball and you can shoot hoops by yourself. Did you play other sports?
Played a little intramural lacrosse in college. No, I was generally athletic. It's funny, my kids, I would show them footage of great 70s players, and they grew up in the sort of playing high school basketball in New York City, in the kind of Michael Jordan and after era, and the Dirk Nowitzki, and they just thought everybody I showed them sucked. They're so slow, they're terrible.
Right.
The way we would look at somebody who didn't jump a lot, like Bob Cousy, and just be like, well, that's a different game.
Yeah.
They were the 78 Bullets that I loved.
What is your changing subjects? Because I assume you're a world traveler. Do you have a favorite city in the world?
I used to like New York. It's on a downturn now. Paris, and Montreal. I love Montreal. I did a series there in the 90s, a kid's series for Nickelodeon, and I loved that city. And I loved that you could fly for an hour and be in a European place.
Yeah, so I've never been to Montreal. I hear it's beautiful. Vancouver, BC is beautiful. Toronto. Someone told me Toronto, and maybe this is true for Montreal, is very clean. Is Montreal very,
Yeah, Montreal's very clean, has beautiful architecture, is kind of cross-cultural. And I loved it. I loved French Canadians. Most of my crew were French. And just a very, they are to France the way we are to England. They're just kind of country cousins that.
Right. What about London?
Love London. Think of London as very clean. Love the kind of palette of all the buildings.
Right.
Love the parks. I love Washington D.C., where I grew up, which is a very green city. I wanted to get out when I was in high school because it seemed like it was just trying to be New York. But it's more than a one company town now, and it's I have a son who lives there, and yeah, it's very. I loved that it was international and kind of beautiful, and nothing's over 5 stories. You could great views of everything and beautiful sort of diplomatic architecture.
Hey, Craigers, how do you stay so slim and fit? Well, I eat healthy and I exercise, and that's where Factor comes in. Eating better is easy with Factor's delicious, ready to eat meals. Every fresh, never frozen meal is chef crafted, dietitian approved, and ready to go in just 2 minutes. You'll have over 35 different options to choose from every week, including Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. Also, there are more than 60 add-ons to help you stay fueled up and feeling good all day long. What are you waiting for? Get started today and get after your goals. 2-minute meals. Fuel up fast with Factor's restaurant quality meals that are ready to heat and eat whenever you are. Pancakes, smoothies, and more. Discover a wide variety of easy options for the entire day, like breakfast, midday bites, and plenty more. No prep, no mess meals. Factor meals are ready to heat and eat, so there's no prepping, cooking, or cleanup needed. Flexible for your schedule. Get as much or as little as you need by choosing your meals every week. Plus, you can pause or reschedule your deliveries at any time. Factor is the perfect solution if you're looking for fast premium options with no cooking required. Sign up and save. We've done the math. Factor is less expensive than takeout, and every meal is dietitian approved to be nutritious and delicious. Head to factormeals.com/Kilborn50 and use code Kilborn50 to get 50% off. That's code Kilborn50 at factormeals.com/Kilborn50 to get 50% off. I'm proud of you. I used to argue with my friends from New York. I think it's a silly argument. They would compare LA to New York. And I just said, listen, I'll admit New York's the greatest city in the world. I would say that to them. I mean, I've been to Paris and London. I'm an Anglophile, English on both sides. So I love London, but I also enjoy Paris. And I like French food and I like the architecture. But I would just say, LA is a sprawling suburb. I just like the weather. I know that New York's a great city. Do you have an opinion on LA, or do you just kind of accept it? Do you like the weather? It's a sprawling suburb. What are your thoughts?
Love LA. Lived in various parts of the Hollywood Hills. Always lived in Laurel Canyon, Los Feliz. I'm staying in Nichols Canyon now at a friend's house. Lived in Beechwood Canyon. Had a big sort of fake kind of Tudor style house that was supposedly built by Chaplin for a mistress.
They always say
he must have had 30 of them.
Yeah. And they said that about Barrymore. They said this is for Barrymore's mistress. And then, but I do enjoy hearing that. I remember when I bought the house in the hills, the Hopper house, I had to go on Letterman, and they told me, he likes stories. And I told a really good story about being a first-time homeowner, and I threw a party and Merv Griffin showed up, and he just loved the story. But the opening jokes were, I had told Ross Abrash, a writer, I said, I got this new house. It was built in the 1920s, and Hopper lived there, and this actress, Margaret Sullivan, was there because her daughter, Brooke Hayward, married Hopper. And I just liked the history, and I told him about how Orson Welles had a apartment in Westwood when he possibly wrote Citizen Kane. This might be where he wrote it. And I was telling Ross that, so we were working on some jokes. I said, Dave, I like the old houses. The newer houses don't have the same character. This is a 3-year-old house. The original owner was Alyssa Milano. This is the room where Joe Rogan got the call. He'll be hosting Fear Factor. I mean, there are these silly jokes, but it is hilarious. I mean, there's a restaurant in Carmel called Casanova, and they said it was like a chef for Charlie Chaplin. He lived there. Like it's just hilarious, the history, and I think it's great.
Yeah, well, I love the history. I love the variation in architecture. I love everything from modernism, like Schindler and Neutra houses, to Mayan revival stuff, to modernism, to like my sort of fake Tudor kind of made out of paper by Paramount set builders that looked like it was 12th century limestone. And I love the weather, and I love the history of the business. I never had to drive really far. I was always pretty close to like whatever lot or office. So I never experienced the kind of, I sort of avoided highways too. I would take an extra.
I never take a freeway. I can't stand it. You got to think too much with the 65 miles per hour, whatever you're going. You got to concentrate, and you can just kind of coast. I through the California stop, through the stop sign, peace out. I just drive through casually. I know we're going to get to your top 5 movies. I just want to ask you a couple television shows. So sometimes I really like The Night Manager. I don't know if you ever saw that miniseries with Hugh Laurie. Did you ever see that?
No, it's on my list. I've heard
it's really good.
It's great.
But it's it's espionage. It's British. It's John le Carre, the spy novelist. But I also can go blue collar, where I do enjoy Bosch, and I've watched all the Bosch seasons, and now it's Bosch Legacy, where he's retired from the LAPD and he's a private investigator. But they have scenes at Formosa Cafe, Musso and Frank, Dan Tanis, and there's something about the old Hollywood. So, do you watch Bosch? Did you ever watch that?
I don't watch Bosch, but I do like when you see things in both Golden Age movies like Sunset Boulevard or Hollywood Confidential.
Yeah.
Where you're seeing Formosa Cafe and
right.
So yeah, I love that. I love that about LA. I fear that it's being sort of forgotten and destroyed, but I love old vestiges of silent era through the 50s.
Yeah, it is irritating. My friend Allison Martino is the daughter of Al Martino, who played Johnny Fontaine in The Godfather, and she has a great Instagram, Vintage LA, and she will post if they're tearing down an important, restaurant or building to build a new high-rise condo complex, and it's very upsetting. I wish the Ambassador Hotel was still here. I wish the Brown Derby was still here.
Oh yeah,
it's very frustrating. Let's jump into the top 5 movies, because you just mentioned Sunset Boulevard, and just to let you know, that is in my top 5.
It's in my top 5.
Wow.
I'd say Sunset Boulevard. Let's see, Coming Home, Best Years of Our Lives, The Graduate.
Ooh.
And maybe Dr. Zhivago. Is that 5?
Oh, wow. Yeah. So I saw Dr. Zhivago once, Julie Christie. She was also in, I think, Heaven Can Wait. I think that was the one she was in. But you have 2 of your 5 are in my top 5.
Oh, really?
The Graduate and Sunset Boulevard. And I heard that Clint Eastwood really liked Sunset Boulevard. My brother had a problem with it. He said he tried to watch it, but they were always in that house, and it was a little depressing. And then he came to my house and watched it in my den, and he goes, "Thanks for making me watch that." And a couple months ago, he was visiting his daughter, and they were up at San Luis Obispo, Morro Bay, and there's an old theater there. And he said they were playing Sunset Boulevard, and we went and watched Sunset Boulevard in the afternoon up at the old theater in Morro Bay. So
it's an amazingly kind of prescient commentary on Hollywood and disposability and ageism, how somebody who 20 years before when the movie takes place was the biggest star in the world, recognizable to everyone, and a screenwriter barely recognizes her. Oh, I'm a Desmond. He used to be
Right.
big.
Yeah.
And also on just how studios kind of crunch up. She says, "Have you had anything made?" And he says, "Yeah, I did a picture about a Dust Bowl family, but when they got through with it, it took place on a U-boat." So the
Well,
studios have been kind of fucking with stuff for a long time.
so it was Billy Wilder he was amazing. And I remember watching Stalag 17, and that was the first movie Princess Cherry and I watched all together. We was on Turner Classic one day and we watched Stalag 17. But I'm a big Billy Wilder fan. And
Bill Holden.
Well, make sure you watch Picnic. He has his shirt off most of the movie.
Kim Novak, right?
Yeah, Kim Novak. So I just wanted to tell
Robertson, a young Cliff Robertson.
Yeah, the house in Sunset Boulevard that Norma Desmond lived in, which was supposed to be off of Sunset in Beverly Hills, was actually a house over here on Irving in Hancock Park, literally a block or the first block towards Wilshire. They had to put the pool in just for the movie, and then they tore it down. It's on the same block where the mayor's mansion is. And it's on Irving, and it's gone. It's part of a parking lot now. They tore that down. Frustrating.
Very upsetting.
Yeah.
Very upsetting.
Okay, so let me think if there's any other movies I wanted to run by you. So I'm a Hitchcock fan. So I just named North by Northwest, even though I love Strangers on a Train, Shadow of a Doubt, Vertigo. What do you think of Hitchcock?
Love him. Love Rear Window. Love Rope.
Yeah.
Love North by Northwest, of course. Strangers on a Train. I love Patricia Highsmith, who wrote Strangers on a Train and also did the Ripley stories. Yeah, love him. Love his use of San Francisco. Love his color palette.
Yeah. It's kind of weird because I'm watching. San Francisco is one of my favorite cities. I say it's my favorite in the United States. It's going through. You said New York's going through a rough time. San Francisco is really going through a rough time, and so I watch movies that are shot in San Francisco. What was that movie called? The one with Bogart and Bacall, Shadows, or I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head. But so Dirty Harry, I don't like the film. I like Dirty Harry, the movies. I watch them all. I'm a Clint fan, but the film is not restored the proper way. And I just rewatched Vertigo, the end of Vertigo, and the colors are just popping, the greens.
Yeah.
And they restored it, and it looks amazing. And meanwhile, Dirty Harry is dark in some of the shots,
Right.
Dark Passages, I think, was the one that they Bogart was film noir in San Francisco.
Right.
So let me ask you this. I'll tell you my 5, and then I just want your response to the. So we named 3 of them: North by Northwest, Sunset Boulevard, The Graduate, and then I have Chinatown on there. I'm a big fan.
Classic, great movie.
Yeah. And I rotate my 5th where they're not. It's not really a top 5. I just kind of say, like I used to have Tootsie on there because I liked it, and now I've had Sideways because I rediscovered Sideways a couple of years ago, and it just made me laugh so much.
Love Sideways. Think it's great. You might want to have a separate category for comedies, because. Yeah, I didn't mention Silence, of which I love some, and I didn't mention really influential movies I've loved, from Blazing Saddles to Office Space to,
Right.
Alexander Payne, great. And modern things, Mighty Wind, Step Brothers, there are lots of things I think hysterical.
I was concerned that you were going to be a little highfalutin and just do foreign movies and, try to show off, but thank God.
The Cameraman with Buster Keaton, City Lights, Limelight, and
Herbert Lom, Phantom of the Opera,
Burger, and I sort of like populist movies. I mean, Best Years of Our Lives is a great post-war movie I love, with Frederick March and Myrna Loy. Where they gave a special Oscar to the guy who only had one arm. But
Do you? I can't remember because you don't do actual. I know you do dialects. Do you do impressions or not?
I
Not
do
to put you on
some.
the spot.
My voice isn't in good. I'm not really an impressionist. Well, you've heard some Plimpton and Harrison today, but yeah, I don't do.
Do you do James Mason?
Not like you.
Do you do Richard Burton?
Like
Elizabeth, Richard Burton, Elizabeth.
uh,
I do too.
yeah, I should have something from Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf or Where Eagles Dare, right? Um, the mic, the sort of walkie-talkie stuff. But I love.
I told you the Clint story, right?
No,
Are you sure?
yeah.
Okay, I have to work blue for 1 second, but I'll tell you the Clint story because you're just reminding me of it. So I used to work in I lived in Carmel, but I worked in Salinas, Monterey. Then I knew Dina. She was the news anchor at a different station, but we were friends. I was a sports guy. And then I go to ESPN and she calls me and says, "Hey, I'm dating Clint Eastwood." And then a few months later, she says, "I'm marrying Clint Eastwood." So Dina Ruiz was married to Clint for, I think it was like 18 years and she has a daughter from Clint. And she's still a good friend of mine. And so I go to New York to do the Daily Show at Comedy Central. It's different than ESPN. It's I have an assistant now. I have a wardrobe person, and then the producer says I got a guy in Midtown who will cut your hair. Everything's paid for. So I go down to Midtown, and it's a gay guy cutting my hair, and I'm in his loft, and we're just talking, and I inevitably bring up Carmel because I miss California so much. And I said, "Yeah, I used to live there. It's my favorite place in the world." He goes, "Oh, Clint Eastwood used to be the mayor there. He has a 12-inch." And I laughed. He actually said the C word, but I softened it. He actually said COCK. But anywho, so just to be technical. And I next time I talked to Dina, I told her the story, and she says, "That's funny. That's not true, but that's funny." And then fast forward, like 3 months later, Dina calls, says, "Clint and I are in Manhattan. You want to go have dinner with us?" So I said, "Great." So we're downtown at Nobu. I'm sitting across from Clint. Dina's next to Clint. And then I'm meeting Allison Eastwood for the first time, Clint's daughter, who I had on my show. And then his William Morris agent is sitting there. So the last thing Kilby's going to do is chit-chat too much. I'm not going to say too much in front of Clint. So halfway through the dinner, my dad's favorite actor was Richard Burton, and we love Where Eagles Dare. So I said, "Hey, my dad and I, we love Where Eagles Dare. Did Richard Burton drink a lot?" And Clint says, "Yeah, I could match him with beer, but he chased it with scotch, and I couldn't keep up. And then the next movie I did is Paint Your Wagon with Lee Marvin, and I thought all actors were lushes." So this one question, Clint starts talking, and then Dina goes, "I told him about the hairdresser," and I said, "Don't we have any secrets?" And Clint goes, "He was an inch off." Oh, that was so funny. Yeah, I had dinner with him a couple times, and I had him on the show, and that was pretty cool. We're going to finish up, young man, with the Life Gorgeous quiz. These are simple questions, profound insights. What's the first concert Ted Jessup went to? First one. Do you remember?
PSNY, 1972, Capitol Center, outside of Washington.
So you were probably 12? No. How old were you? Okay.
Yeah, 12.
That's pretty cool that you knew that they were good. You go with your folks, or who'd you go with?
I went with other friends.
Wow.
Friends, a couple that were a little older. Weird, they were hanging out with a 12-year-old. But I had 3 older sisters that introduced me to a lot of music. So I knew who Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young were, and the Dead, and the Burrito Brothers, and I was sort of, and Leonard Cohen. I was made aware of what was cool, kind of some of my classmates.
Okay, so I have this new question that I like to ask on the Life Gorgeous quiz because I actually gave it to Goldie recently, and he struggled a little bit, and I texted it to Alec, and he struggled because you guys are East Coast snobs and you don't really know the flyover states. So Minnesota, there are 4 states that border Minnesota. Can you name 3?
North Dakota.
Very good.
South Dakota.
Correct. Those are the 2 that Goldie got. It would be funny if someone said North Dakota and they wouldn't say South Dakota. Anyway,
My mother is from Minneapolis, so I have been there many times. But let's see, it's Wisconsin.
yes, very good. Because we're cross-state rivals with the Green Bay Packers in Green Bay, Wisconsin. And then the other one directly below, south, is Iowa.
Iowa.
Good job, man. I didn't think the East Coast snob people would get that.
I have some Midwestern ties, and I have great respect. My girlfriend's singing in Minneapolis tonight.
Oh,
yeah, I love that state.
2 more questions, and they're food questions. Because I haven't seen you in a while. I used to do this one. Favorite pie. Do you have a favorite pie?
I like a pumpkin.
Oh, now you said that quickly. I like that. Why did you say that?
First of all, I don't eat cake.
Right.
If I had a birthday, I would have a pie. And I just find it the sort of tastiest, creamiest, most manageable pie. It's not a floppy fruit pie. So yeah, pumpkin
That's
pie.
good. Yeah, I think it's underrated. And I have a friend who doesn't like pumpkin pie. They think there are beads of sweat on it. She's very obnoxious when she talks about it. But I love the spice. It's only once a year. I also like a la mode, like blueberry or boysenberry a la mode.
Or the combos, the strawberry, rhubarb, or peach.
All right, last food question. I know we're both healthy now. This is an indulgence, but top 3 sandwiches of all time.
Tomato and mayonnaise alone.
Wow, that's weird.
No, that's kind of a waspy thing.
No cheese or anything on there? No mozzarella? Not any.
I like a ham and cheese.
Yeah.
Just a classic ham and cheese. The bread is paramount in all these. And I like a BLT.
Okay. People have said BLT. Now, I'm doing this, I'm hitting you with the information, the question right now, so it's off the top of your head. I'm just going to tell you mine because I put thought into it and I have a lot of time over here.
Can I guess what they are?
Sure.
Liverwurst?
Liverwurst?
No, go ahead. Tell me what.
Reuben.
Oh, yeah.
Because I like sauerkraut, and I don't mind if it's pastrami or corned beef. I like pumpernickel or rye. I love rye bread, so when I get, like my second one that I like is chicken salad, I like toasted rye with the red onions and the cheddar cheese and the chicken salad. And then the controversial one I say, which some people can't stand, but some people like, is tuna melt. I like tuna melt.
I like a tuna melt. I like a plain tuna. But if you want something a little gooier, I love all those sandwiches. I don't eat them anymore. I sort of stay away from bread and cheese, but those are great sandwiches. I never went for the giant multi-meat sort of Italian sub.
Yeah.
It's like with vinegar and like.
Right.
I'm a mayo man.
I love mayo. Thank you, sir. That was fun.
So great to talk again and say hi to everybody. And I'll talk to you soon. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Ted Jessup. Ladies and gentlemen, that's our show. I want to thank the very funny, clever Ted Jessup. We'll see you next time. And remember, young people, I'm proud of you.